Hello, welcome to News Centre. I'm Parikshit Luthra. Delhi woke up to the coldest day of the season yesterday. A thick blanket of fog had engulfed the region, causing flight disruptions and prompting authorities to issue travel advisory. Chaos took place at the Delhi airport after more than 400 flights were impacted, and the delays ranged anywhere between 4 to 5 hours. Low visibility on the runway threw passengers' travel into disarray. Passengers were stranded for several hours at the airport and some even inside the aircraft at the tarmac. Aviation Minister Jitendra took to social media platform X to acknowledge the challenge faced by passengers in Delhi. The Aviation Minister clarified that the DGCA will issue directions to airlines for better communication. Joining me now to take this discussion forward is MR Sivaraman, former DGCA official, Jitendra, Bhargava, former Executive Director at Air India, and Captain Sam, President at Airline Pilots Association, Captain Sam Thomas. Jitendra, Bhargava, if I can begin with you, why is it that every year airlines, the government says that we are fully prepared to deal with the winter schedule, but come heavy fog, we see the situation of very heavy flight delays, passengers being stranded on the tarmac? Why do you think this is happening repeatedly?
See, to expect that the fog will set in, the visibility will be very low, and yet flights will be operated should not be thought of at all. The chaos will be there when fog is there and visibility is below the minimum level because flights have to be operated with utmost safety. Now, when you have fog for a prolonged period, the airlines get into a whole lot of mess and problems because the planes get diverted, the pilots, FDTL comes in, so there is total chaos. And at the airport terminal, what you have is more people there than the staff can handle, which is quite understandable. And the airline cannot just muster staff to take care of the additional workload because of the increased number of passengers who they have to handle. Because you need BSAS security passes to enter, besides the fact that they must be trained. So the fact is, you cannot wish it away. But what the airlines can certainly do in cooperation with the DGCA and the airport is to minimize the inconvenience that is caused. Now, that is where the failure has come in, and that is where the attention needs to become. Let me cite one example. Only 3 days ago in the United States, over 2,700 flights got cancelled and diverted and went out of, were not operational. What did FAA, the counterpart of DGCA, do there? It did not issue notice to the airlines, as the minister says, issue a SOP to the airlines for better communication. FAA, on its own account, issued on the social media, reached out to passengers to say, please call up the airport, please call up the airline to check whether your flight was operational. Now, in my opinion, that is what is called the proactive approach of DGCA, rather than become a cop to administer the airlines. There is a basic change required. I fully agree with you. Passengers are being inconvenienced. India gets a bad name. Something that could have been minimized has not been done. But the fact is, you simply cannot wish it away. That fog will set in, visibility will be low, and yet the flights will be operated. Passengers will not be inconvenienced. The fact is, safety is
Mr.
paramount.
Bhargava, I'm going to come back to you. Let me get in Mr. Sivaraman, who has been with the DGCA earlier. Mr. Sivaraman, can the airlines be held accountable when it comes to lack of communication? Why is it that when you have so many delays, so many diversions, hundreds of passengers are queuing up, not just in Delhi, but in Bengaluru and other airports, and many of them have no information? There is anger, there is sloganeering happening. The staff at the counters have to bear the brunt of the customers' anger. Where is the communication gap? Can airlines be held accountable? Can airport authorities be held accountable?
See, everyone has a role to play in this. The IMD had issued warnings that there will be heavy fog in northern India for 3 to 4 days. And they're still predicting fog there. And temperatures have plummeted. So you cannot hold any particular body or organization responsible for this. It has already been warned that such a situation would prevail. And it is prevailing not only in India, but in other parts of the world also. We have seen this thing. What could have been done is, if this kind of a situation has been forecast, then the airlines could have issued a caution to all the passengers in the list who are supposed to fly from their airports at a particular time when the fog is very intense, that there could be delays. Please watch your SMS or watch your WhatsApp, whether there is any information on the flight getting delayed. I think most of the airlines send information. Yesterday also I saw one airline sending this information on the cell phone that your flight is getting delayed by 2 hours on account of fog in Delhi. So passengers have also got a role to play. They have to look at the messages that they are getting from the airlines. As far as the airports are concerned, airports have got, I think, category 3B. Delhi has got category 3B runways, 3 or 4 runways they have got. Many other airports have got category 3B runways. Now, whether the airlines have got sufficiently trained pilots who can land on these runways on category 3B landing is a question which DGC and the airlines will have to sort it out. I saw in the newspapers that 50 pilots diverted from Delhi airport because they did not have permission to do category 3B landing, or they had not been sufficiently trained. So it's a kind of, responsibility falls on all the people, including the passengers. We cannot simply blame one party or the other in this.
Right. You're right, Mr. Sivaraman, because that particular day, when 50 out of 58 flights were diverted, it was said that 86% of the Delhi-bound flights were diverted because the pilots were not trained in Cat-3 instrument landing system. Captain Thomas, if I were to come to you, why do you think we have this problem? You have the resources in place. Cat-3B is a landing system that allows aircraft to land in low visibility situations where the visibility is 50 meters, like during rains, dense fog, or in snow. So why do you think airlines are not investing enough in training pilots to comply with this instrument landing system? Captain Thomas, are you with us?
Yeah, are you able to hear me? Hello?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, sorry. IMD has been predicting this for the last 150 years. And when you have a sort of bureaucracy that is there in civil aviation, this is exactly what is going to happen. And probably about 15 years back, we got the Cat-3 Bravo, if I remember correctly. And until then, it was just Cat-2. And as far as the airlines are concerned, it's a cost when training pilots for Cat-3 Bravo. And there are very intelligent people in airlines who say that it's going to be only for about 15 to 20 days, so why bother? That has been the thought process. Having said that, it's a 2-day training completely, and it does not take much effort from the airlines to have their complete set of pilots trained in Cat-3 Bravo. Now, on the topic of this particular incident that has happened, we'd like to very categorically say that we condemn any kind of physical attack onto the crew. And there are 3 points under which the particular incident or incidents like this have been happening. Now, firstly is the profile of the passengers that travel by low-cost airlines. Second is the theatrics or the indoctrination that has happened to the Indigo staff, which result in theatrics. Now, when you indulge in theatrics, remember you will get brickbats along with the bouquets. Now, on the third part is the social media outreach that has happened. And everybody seems to be an aviation expert, every passenger. Now, the complexity of delays cannot be explained as easily as what one expects.
Captain Thomas?
Sure.
Captain Thomas, sorry to interrupt you. One quick question that I want to put in, and we completely condemn what happened with the pilot. The fact, those visuals of a customer going and hitting a pilot because the flight was inordinately delayed, that is absolutely not acceptable. But what I would like to ask you is explain to our viewer why passengers are often stranded in planes for several hours, for 4 to 5 hours, 6 hours at a time. Why doesn't deboarding take place? What is the difficulty that pilots find themselves in because of these flight situations, because of Very heavy traffic at the airport, a very long queue.
Yeah, that is a very complex question. Now, in our country, Satyameva Jayate is the slogan, but hardly anybody tells the truth over there. Now, particularly in Indigo's case, the staff does not know what is happening. When there's let me try and explain this in a very simple manner without getting too technical. There are delays that could happen due to, say, for instance, some engine problem. Now, firstly, you need to determine how long it is going to take. Should I convey that to the passengers immediately? Should I get in touch with engineering? Then the engineering, there's a big think tank that goes all the way around. But having said that, people do not tell the truth. As far as airlines are concerned, airline management, airline staff, not entirely by their fault, they are also fed wrong information. A delay cannot be explained very quickly to the passengers. Now, the call to deboard the passengers also has repercussions with the OTP or the on-time performance, which is the most stupid thing that a regulator could start monitoring on the airlines. Now, as far as Indigo Airlines is concerned, they have ridiculously taken it to a level where they announce that when they are on time, they do Indigo standard time. And by stating the block times, they reach a place and then say that we have reached well ahead of time. Now, when you combine that with the pilots, most pilots are not very sort of suave at speaking to public speaking. So they have been encouraged to come out into the cabin, which they should not. And they've been given a very secure cockpit. They should make their announcements from there. Now, when you do that, now it's a chain of events that takes place when you are asked to deboard the passengers. Now you go back into this one, then there's a head count, there's a reconciliation. You don't know whether baggage is to be taken off or not. Some passengers will opt to get off the airplane. It's a nightmare. So the airline try and minimize that in India by not announcing delays exactly, or by saying the old Indian Airlines way of announcing half an hour delay every half an hour. So that's the way it goes. As long as we don't be open with the passengers, this is going to be a perennial problem.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Captain Thomas, for joining us. I'd request Jitendra, Bhargava and Mr. Sivaraman to continue being with us. We're taking a short break, but back with much more on the flight delay and the chaos at the airports. And we will go across to Mr. Bhargava and Mr. Sivaraman for more perspective. Welcome back. You're watching News Center. A recap of the story we are tracking this evening. A thick blanket of fog has engulfed Delhi as recorded the coldest day of the season yesterday. Chaos ensued at the Delhi airport after more than 400 flights were impacted. The aviation minister clarified the DGCA will issue directions to airlines for better communication. Danish Anand gets us more.
Well, after chaotic scenes at the Delhi airport on Sunday, flight operations are back to normal today. Due to severe weather conditions and visibility dropping to as low as zero due to dense fog, over 400 flights were delayed, many were cancelled and diverted as well. On 14 January, the on-time performance of all the airlines sharply dropped. Indigo had an OTP of just 21%, followed by 29.6% for Vistara, 30.2% for India Express, 41.8%, 46.8% and 51.8% for Akasa, Air India and SpiceJet respectively. Delhi Airport, which has 4 runways, was operating with 3 runways, with just 1 runway being Cat 3 compliant, as the runway 2810 is under renovation right now. All of this had a cascading effect and flights were delayed by at least 4 to 5 hours yesterday at the Delhi airport. Aviation Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia, however, said that although ops were halted for a while due to zero visibility, but between 5 a.m. and 9 a.m., the Cat 3 runway handled 30 landings and 1 takeoff during the 4-hour period, whereas the non-Cat 3 runway couldn't handle any flight. In Cat 3 operation, the navigation system allows for landings with a minimum visibility of 50 meters. The minister has also directed the Delhi airport to immediately expedite the operationalization of Cat 3 enabled 4th runway and get an approval from DGCA. Further, DGCA has also been directed by the minister to issue an SOP for airlines on better communication and facilitation of passengers to minimize the discomfort in view of flight cancellations and due to delays because of adverse weather.
And we still have with us MR Sivaraman, former DGCA official, and also Jitendra Bhargava, former executive director at Air India. Mr. Sivaraman, let me begin by asking you, what now needs to be done in terms of improving the capacity of airports? There are about 5 or 6 airports in the country which have Cat 3 instrument landing system. We have been seeing long queues, a lot of chaos at Bengaluru airport as well. Anything you feel that can be done now in the coming days to reduce the pressure?
The pilots can be trained on Category 3B at short notice. Probably they can, at least they've got simulators now everywhere. And probably it can be done. And here the DGCA comes into the picture. And he can definitely call the airlines and find out the position regarding the training of pilots in Category 3B landing. The second thing is, I don't know whether there is a real-time weather monitoring board in the airports of India, because IMD can certainly give 24 hours real-time situation of the weather conditions in and around the airports in the country. And the pilots and the airlines can also look into it and determine whether they have to inform the passengers about a delay in flight taking off because of the weather conditions. So there is a responsibility on the part of the DGCA and double responsibility on the part of the airlines to train the pilots, to inform the passengers appropriately, and for the airports to maintain all their navigation facilities and landing facilities during monsoon and during these kind of weather conditions in proper order. I mean, if they start repairing the runways now, at this time, it's of no use. Every time, I mean, when I was DGCA during the monsoon period, just before the monsoon period, pilots would be trained on monsoon operation, though who have not been trained properly. They'll be given monsoon checks by senior pilots to see whether they can properly land aircraft during heavy monsoon or heavy rains, because there is a particular technique of landing and takeoff during rain, to hydroplaning, etc. on the runway. Secondly, as far as the foggy conditions are concerned, here, of course, the training of pilots on Category 3B landing becomes very important. No doubt, some of the aircraft which were produced even 30 years ago, Airbus 300 and Airbus 320, can do auto landing. Without the pilot touching the controls, you can do auto landing. Some places, there are auto landing facilities. I do not know whether there is any auto landing facility here. For that, the runways have to be very well equipped, and surrounding areas also should be in such a manner they don't interfere with the radio signals, etc. in the airport. So there are a lot of things that can be done to reduce the inconvenience of passengers. The passengers should also cooperate. You see, when once nature plays this havoc, nobody can help at that particular point of time. Passengers cannot become unruly. They start beating up pilots, misbehaving with the crew and all. That should not happen at all. And this particular passenger who had beat up a pilot, he should be debarred from flying for his lifetime.
Right. That is an important point. Let me come to you. And this is something that must go out in public interest as well. Mr. Bhargava, the consequences for passengers behaving in an unruly manner. There is, of course, a penal action in the form of a criminal case that you could face. But here, you're not really hitting another passenger or behaving with the crew, misbehaving with the crew. You've actually gone and assaulted the pilot of the aircraft. What kind of consequences can that have for passengers who are doing something of that kind?
You know, the first is, take the impact on the morale of the crew on board. They come to serve, and to be treated in this manner is simply not acceptable. Now it's a question of how do you deter passengers from behaving the way like this rogue passenger did. Now, we put them on the no-fly list. The law has been there for the last 7-8 years. But put this question to yourself as a media person. Are we aware of how many people have been put on no-fly list in the last 5 years? And the person who was put on the no-fly list, whether he's continued to be on. It has to be put in public domain, this information, so that it acts as a deterrent to other passengers from behaving. And as we all know, it happens at the spur of the moment. The question is, cabin crew is there, pilots are there, they're making the announcement. And yesterday, the incident involving Indigo was a case of a pilot who had just come after the previous pilot, FDT, had gone out. And now he was only explaining, and look at the kind of behavior he had. Now, one can always say, yes, Udega Desh ka Aam Nagrik, we keep highlighting that aspect. Now, are they in a position to basically control themselves? And as Mr. Sivaraman very rightly said, Passengers need to behave, need to appreciate the operational constraints in which the airlines are currently operating. No airline would deliberately delay a flight, divert a flight, cause inconvenience to passengers. It's a nature fog that's coming in. Just one more point I would like to clarify, which Captain Sam Thomas made, and which was, I wouldn't agree with it. You see, the reason why adequate number of pilots haven't been trained in Cat 3 in the last few years, well, of course, take the COVID period aside. 133 new aircraft got inducted in the year 2023, which means airlines required 1,800 to 2,000 pilots for basically operating the normal flights. Now, if they were to ground these pilots and said, look, we are going to put you on Cat 3 training, it would have impacted the flights in the normal period. And what does it mean when you operate a lower number of flights? Increase in fares, which have its own dimensions, public chaos, etc. You see, leave it to the airline. They know what is best.
Right.
It is not for an association, pilot association, to speak out. The management of airlines must be made to speak out on it. And we find the management of airlines are totally silent on the issue, as if the image does not matter. Inconvenience passenger. Imagine if a chief executive was to come on television and say, we sympathize with the passengers who have been inconvenienced. This is the reality. We are doing our utmost. A word of assurance has to be there. But surprisingly, there is total silence from all airlines. And that is where the minister's direction to DGCA, that there should be SOP circulated. It should not only be to the passengers through the social media that so many flights get delayed or expect delays because of the fog, etc. It's the word of assurance, positive message must emanate from the airline officers.
All right. Mr. Sivaraman, finally, when it comes to tackling passengers who are losing their cool at the counter, at the boarding counter or inside the aircraft, how can the staff, the crew, be trained better in handling such situations?
The crew, we cannot train a crew to be a commando, because sometimes these passengers really misbehave. I have seen it in the airport on several occasions. Most of the crew, the people who attend to the passengers at the counters, they are quite reasonable and they behave very well with them. What can those people do when there are 100 people standing, and if one man misbehaves and 10 others support him? The crew and the people at the counter can't do anything. So the one thing, see, I'm of course a very ruthless bureaucrat. The only thing that will work is a lifetime debarment of the person who has assaulted the crew or assaulted a co-passenger inside the aircraft. Lifetime debarment. Or at least for 10 years he should not fly. That will be good for his health. He can walk wherever he wants to go. Because in this country, you just punish him for 10 days or 15 days, he's back again to his old ways. Therefore, there should be deterrent punishment. And that punishment can be given only by the government, because the criminal law should be amended, whereby they should say if anyone is assaulted inside the aircraft, a passenger, the person will be debarred from flying for 5 years or 10 years. Then only they will start behaving properly.
All right, Mr. Sivaraman and Mr. Bhargava, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Appreciate your views on the chaos that we've seen at the airport. And this is an annual mess that we witness, and also the action that should be taken against passengers who behave in such an unruly fashion. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of News Center. More news and updates continue right here.